Isabel Russo thought hiding behind a checkout counter would keep her safe. 7 months pregnant with a secret that could destroy her, she'd disappeared into the fluorescent aisles of a grocery store, trading silk sheets for minimum wage. 9 months ago, she'd divorced Luca DeMarco, the most dangerous man in the city, and walked away with nothing but the life growing inside her. She never told him about the baby, but when he walked through those automatic doors and his eyes locked on the unmistakable curve of her belly, everything shattered. One look. That's all it took. Now he knows. If you're hooked, stay until the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. Hit that like button, and let's dive in. The fluorescent lights of Morrison's grocery hummed their monotonous song, casting everything in that peculiar shade of institutional white that made even fresh produce look tired. Isabel Russo stood behind Register 7, scanning items with the mechanical precision of someone who'd done this 10,000 times before. Beep. Cereal. Beep. Milk. Beep. Frozen dinners that would taste like cardboard and regret. Her back ached. Everything ached, really, but her back especially. 7 months pregnant and standing for 8-hour shifts would do that to a person. The oversized employee vest she wore, 2 sizes too large, borrowed from the men's section, did its job of hiding the swell of her belly, though barely. She'd gotten good at angling her body, at keeping the register between herself and curious eyes. "That'll be $47.50, she said to the elderly woman in front of her, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. The woman counted out exact change with shaking hands. Isabel waited, patient, because what else was there to do? Rush was a luxury from another life. A life with marble floors and crystal chandeliers. A life she'd walked away from 9 months ago when she'd signed divorce papers with hands that wouldn't stop trembling. 9 months. Funny how that number kept appearing. She hadn't told him. Hadn't told anyone, really, except her obstetrician and the manager who'd reluctantly approved her maternity leave request. By the time anyone at Morrison's noticed, she'd be gone. Disappeared. Again. "Thank you, dear," the elderly woman said, gathering her bags. "Have a good day." The afternoon stretched ahead like a prison sentence. Tuesday afternoons were always slow, the dead zone between lunch rush and dinner prep. Isabel restocked the candy display, methodically arranging chocolate bars while her mind wandered to dangerous places. To nurseries she couldn't afford to furnish. To names she'd whispered to herself in the dark. To the father who didn't know he was about to become one. Luca DeMarco. Even thinking his name made her chest tighten. 6 feet of controlled violence wrapped in bespoke suits, with eyes that could seduce or intimidate depending on his mood. She'd loved him once. Maybe she still did, in that terrible way that love sometimes persists even after trust has been murdered. The automatic doors whooshed open. Isabel didn't look up immediately. Customers came and went, an endless stream of strangers buying their dinner and their toilet paper and their small pieces of normalcy. But something made her glance toward the entrance. Maybe instinct, maybe fate. Her heart stopped. Luca DeMarco stood just inside the doorway, and he was looking directly at her, time fractured. The fluorescent lights seemed to brighten and dim simultaneously. The muzak playing overhead, some sanitized version of a song she used to know, became deafening white noise. He looked exactly the same. Dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. Tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than she'd make in 6 months. But it was his eyes that pinned her in place. Those impossibly dark eyes that had once looked at her with devotion and now held something more complicated. Shock, recognition, and as his gaze dropped to her midsection, despite the oversized vest, despite her careful positioning, calculation. She watched his expression shift, watched the exact moment he understood. Her hands moved to her belly instinctively, protectively. The vest had ridden up slightly when she'd bent to restock the candy. Not much. Just enough. Luca's jaw tightened. His hands, she noticed, curled into fists at his sides before he deliberately relaxed them. He began walking toward her, each step measured and purposeful, like a predator who'd finally found the prey that got away. "Isabel." His voice was exactly as she remembered, deep, controlled, with that slight rasp that used to make her shiver. We need to talk. Around them, the grocery store continued its mundane operations. A stock boy pushed a cart of canned goods down aisle 3. The bakery announced fresh cookies over the intercom. Mrs. Henderson from the deli waved at Isabel, oblivious to the bomb that had just detonated in Register 7's checkout lane. "I'm working," Isabel said, and was proud that her voice came out steady. "You need to leave." "I don't think so." He stopped on the other side of the register, close enough that she could smell his cologne, that same woody, expensive scent that used to cling to her skin. "Is it mine?" The bluntness of the question stole her breath. No preamble, no gentle let-in, just straight to the heart of it, because that was Luca. Always direct, always in control. "I don't know what you're—" "Don't." The single word cut like a blade. "Don't insult us both with lies. Is it mine?" The elderly woman from earlier had circled back, apparently having forgotten something. She stood 3 feet away, clutching her purse and looking between them with undisguised curiosity. Isabel's manager, Tom, a nervous man in his 50s who handled conflict by pretending it didn't exist, emerged from the office. "Is there a problem here?" Luca didn't even glance at him. "No problem. Just having a conversation with my wife." "Ex-wife," Isabel corrected, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's a matter of perspective." He pulled something from his jacket pocket. Her heart lurched, expecting what? A gun? But it was just his phone. He set it on the counter between them. "You have 2 choices. You can walk out with me right now, voluntarily, and we'll discuss this like adults. Or I can make a phone call and a car will be here in 3 minutes to escort you out. Either way, Isabel, you're leaving with me." The thing about Luca, the thing that had terrified and thrilled her in equal measure during their marriage, was that he never made empty threats. If he said a car would arrive in 3 minutes, it would arrive in 2.5. "You can't just—" she started. "I can. You know I can." His voice softened slightly, and somehow that was worse than the steel. "Please, don't make this harder than it needs to be." Tom cleared his throat. "Ma'am, do you know this gentleman?" Gentleman. Isabel might have laughed if her entire world wasn't collapsing. Luca DeMarco was many things, powerful, dangerous, magnetic. But gentleman was a stretch. "It's fine, Tom." The words tasted like ash. I need to go." "You're scheduled until 6. Then I guess I'm leaving early." She untied her vest with shaking hands, folded it with more care than it deserved, set it on the counter. Her purse was in her locker. She'd have to get it. Walk through the break room. Past coworkers who'd want to know what was happening. Sarah from Produce, who always asked too many questions. Miguel from Meat, who'd offered to give Luca a piece of his mind if she needed backup. Sweet, oblivious Miguel, who had no idea that the man standing at Register 7 could end him with a single phone call. "I'll wait," Luca said, reading her hesitation. "Get your things." The break room was exactly as depressing as always. Flickering fluorescent tube in the corner, ancient microwave that smelled like burnt popcorn, motivational poster about teamwork that someone had defaced with a mustache. Isabel's hands fumbled with her locker combination. 27, 15, 8. Numbers that used to mean something. Her birthday. Their anniversary. The day she'd left. Sarah materialized beside her, eyes wide. "Oh my God, was that him? The ex you never talk about?" "I have to go. He's gorgeous. Like stupidly gorgeous. What happened? Why'd you—" "Sarah." Isabel grabbed her purse, her jacket. "I really have to go. Are you in trouble? Should I call someone?" Who would she call? The police? To report what exactly? That Isabel's ex-husband had walked into her workplace and asked about their child. That he'd requested, not forced, not dragged, but requested that she leave with him? "I'm fine. I'll text you later." She wouldn't. They both knew it. Luca waited exactly where she'd left him, looking absurdly out of place among the grocery store detritus. A man in a $2,000 suit surrounded by discount cereal and wilted lettuce. He'd drawn attention. Customers stared, whispered. Tom hovered nearby, clearly debating whether to assert some kind of managerial authority and wisely deciding against it. When Luca saw her emerge from the back, he straightened. extended one hand toward the exit in a gesture that was almost chivalrous. After you. The late afternoon sun hit her like a physical force after the artificial lighting inside. Isabel blinked, momentarily disoriented. A black Mercedes idled at the curb, of course it did, with a driver she recognized. Marcus, one of Luca's security team. He'd been at their wedding, had driven them home the night she'd discovered what her husband really did for a living. Marcus's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror as Luca opened the back door. Something like sympathy flickered there before his professional mask slammed back into place. "Get in," Luca said quietly. This was it. The moment. She could run, could scream, could make a scene that would accomplish exactly nothing except embarrassing them both. Luca wouldn't hurt her. She believed that absolutely, even now. But he also wouldn't let her go. Not anymore. Not with his child growing inside her. She got in the car. The leather seats were exactly as she remembered. Butter soft, expensive, slightly cool against her legs. Luca slid in beside her, maintaining a careful distance. The door closed with that particular sound luxury vehicles made. Substantial, final, like a bank vault ceiling. Marcus pulled away from the curb smoothly. They'd gone 3 blocks before Luca spoke. "How far along?" 7 months? And you weren't going to tell me. Not a question. An accusation wrapped in forced calm. Isabel stared out the window, watching her neighborhood slide past. The laundromat where she did her washing every Sunday. The bodega that sold day-old pastries for half price. The life she'd built from scraps and determination. "No," she admitted. "I wasn't." She felt rather than saw him absorb that. Felt the tension radiating off him in waves. Luca had always been a physical presence. The kind of man who filled a room just by entering it. In the confined space of the car, he was overwhelming. Why? Such a simple question, such a complicated answer. "Because you would have done exactly this," she said finally, turning to face him. "You would have swooped in, taken control, made decisions for me. You would have protected you," he finished. "Protected our child. Yes, Isabel, I would have. I will." "I didn't ask for your protection." "You never do." His voice carried an edge of something that might have been pain. "That's always been your problem. Too proud, too stubborn, too willing to suffer rather than accept help." "Help?" The word came out sharper than intended. "Is that what you call it? Because it looks a lot like kidnapping from where I'm sitting. You're sitting in a car, heading somewhere safe, instead of standing on your feet for 8 hours selling groceries to people who don't even see you." He leaned back, rolling his shoulders like he was trying to release tension. "I call that an upgrade. I call that you making my choices for me, again." The silence that followed was heavy, weighted with all the arguments they'd had before. About control, about freedom, about what love meant when one person held all the power. Marcus turned onto Riverside Drive. Isabel's stomach dropped. She knew this route, knew exactly where they were going. "You're taking me to the estate. Where else would I take you?" "My apartment. My life. Your apartment is a 4th-floor walk-up with neighbors who deal drugs and locks that wouldn't stop a determined teenager." Luca's voice went hard. "You're 7 months pregnant with my child. You're not going back there. You don't get to decide that. Watch me." The estate appeared on the horizon. A sprawling Mediterranean-style compound that looked like it belonged in a movie about old money and older secrets. White stone walls, terracotta roof tiles, security cameras disguised as decorative light fixtures. Isabel had loved it once, had planned to raise children here back when she'd been naive enough to believe the man she married was just a successful businessman with unusual working hours. The gates opened silently as they approached. Coded entry, multiple layers of security, guards who carried guns they'd actually use. Not a home, a fortress. "This is insane," she whispered. "This is necessary." Luca's hand moved. She tensed, but he just loosened his tie with sharp, frustrated movements. "You want to hate me for it? Fine. Add it to the list. But you're staying here where I can keep you safe." "Safe from what? I was doing fine." "Were you?" He turned to face her fully now, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. "Working yourself to exhaustion for minimum wage? Hiding from me? From everyone? That's fine, is it? It's better than being your prisoner. You're not my prisoner. You're my... He stopped, jaw working. You're carrying my child. That doesn't give you ownership of me. I never said it did. You're acting like it. The car stopped. They'd arrived at the main entrance, massive wooden doors that looked like they'd been salvaged from a cathedral. Marcus got out, opened Luca's door, then circled around to open hers. Isabel didn't move. I'm not getting out. Luca exhaled slowly. Isabel, no. You want to have this conversation? We have it here, in the car, before I set foot in that house again. For a moment she thought he might argue, might simply reach over and physically carry her inside. He was strong enough, determined enough. Instead, he surprised her. Close the door, Marcus. Give us a minute. The door shut. They were alone again, suspended in this strange bubble of expensive leather and unresolved history. What do you want me to say? Luca asked quietly. That I'm sorry for wanting to protect you? I'm not. That I should have left you in that grocery store? I couldn't. The second I saw you, saw what you were hiding from me. I wasn't hiding, I was surviving. You were running. He dragged a hand through his hair, messing it up for the first time since she'd seen him. It made him look more human, more like the man she'd fallen for instead of the criminal kingpin she'd left. And I get it. I do. You found out things about me, about what I do, and you couldn't handle it. You needed space. Fine. I gave you space. You gave me divorce papers and a settlement check. What else was I supposed to do? You wanted out. I let you out. And now you're pulling me back in. Now everything's changed. His hand moved again, and this time it landed on her belly, gentle, reverent, his palm covering the curve she'd tried so hard to hide. This changes everything. She should pull away, should establish boundaries. But the warmth of his hand, the way his entire body seemed to soften at the contact, it undid something inside her. Boy or girl? He asked softly. I don't know yet. I wanted to be surprised. When are you due? November 15th, approximately. That's 2 months away. I'm aware. His thumb traced a small circle against her belly. Through her shirt, through all the barriers she'd tried to build, the gesture felt impossibly intimate. Have you been taking care of yourself? Proper prenatal care, vitamins, checkups? Yes, Luca. I'm not an idiot. I didn't say you were. I just... He pulled his hand back, curled it into a fist against his thigh. I need to know you're okay, that the baby's okay. We're fine. Define fine. Because from where I'm sitting, fine involved you working double shifts while pregnant and living in a neighborhood where I heard gunshots last month. How do you know about the double shifts? The silence that followed was damning. You've been watching me. Not a question. A realization that made her blood run cold. How long? Isabel, how long have you known where I was? He met her eyes, unflinching. Since about 2 weeks after you left. The world tilted. 2 weeks. You've known for 9 months where I was, and you didn't... You wanted space. I gave you space. I made sure you were safe. Made sure no one who might want to hurt me found you, but I didn't interfere. Not until you found out about the baby. Yes. No apology in his voice, no regret. I would have stayed away, Isabel. Would have let you build whatever life you wanted as long as you were safe. But this... His hand gestured between them, toward her belly. This I can't ignore. She wanted to be angry, wanted to rage at him for the surveillance, the manipulation, the arrogance of deciding what she needed. But underneath the anger was something more complicated, something that felt dangerously close to relief. Because the truth was, she'd been terrified. 7 months pregnant and alone, working herself to exhaustion, lying awake at night wondering what she'd do when the baby came. How she'd afford daycare, how she'd manage on maternity leave that was only partially paid, how she'd protect a newborn in an apartment with locks that didn't work and neighbors who made her nervous. She'd chosen pride over safety, independence over security, and maybe that had been brave, or maybe it had just been stupid. If I come inside, she said slowly, it's not forever. It's temporary, until the baby comes. until I figure out what comes next. Whatever you need. And you don't make decisions for me. About the baby, about my health care, about anything. We discuss. We decide together. Agreed. And I want my own space. My own room. Not, she couldn't quite meet his eyes. Not the bedroom we shared. Something flickered in his expression. Hurt, maybe. But he nodded. The guest wing. You can have the whole thing if you want. One room is fine. Then one room you'll have. It was too easy, too neat. She didn't trust it, but her back ached, and her feet hurt, and the thought of sleeping in a real bed instead of the second-hand mattress that made her back worse, it was seductive. Okay, she said finally. Okay? Luca opened his door, came around to help her out. His hand on her elbow was gentle, supportive without being controlling. Muscle memory kicked in. How many times had he helped her out of cars exactly like this? Guided her upstairs, across ballrooms, through the maze of his world. The interior of the house was exactly as she remembered and completely different. Same marble floors, same soaring ceilings, same grand staircase that curved up to the second floor. But the furniture had changed. The art was different, as if he'd tried to erase her from the space. Or maybe she was projecting. Mrs. Chen will show you to your room, Luca said, and as if summoned, the housekeeper appeared from the kitchen hallway. Mrs. Chen was in her 60s, kind-faced, efficient. She'd worked for Luca's family for decades, had tried to teach Isabel Italian cooking and basic Italian phrases during the brief year of their marriage. Miss Isabel's! Her face lit up, then carefully rearranged itself into professional neutrality. It's good to see you. Your room is ready. I put fresh flowers, lavender, the kind you like. She'd remembered. After all this time, she'd remembered. Thank you, Mrs. Chen. I'll have dinner sent up. You must be tired after... Her eyes flicked to Luca, uncertain how much to say. After work, Isabel finished. Yes, I'm exhausted. Go rest, Luca said. We'll talk more later. She should argue, should insist they finish this conversation now, establish rules and boundaries while she still had the energy to fight. But exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight. Fine, later. Following Mrs. Chen up the grand staircase felt surreal, like stepping into a past life or a dream she couldn't quite wake from. The guest wing was in the east section of the house, overlooking the gardens. Mrs. Chen opened a door to reveal a bedroom that was somehow both impersonal and perfectly suited to her tastes. Cream-colored walls, comfortable furniture, French doors leading to a private balcony, and lavender, fresh lavender in a crystal vase on the bedside table. I'll bring dinner in an hour, Mrs. Chen said gently. Unless you'd like to sleep. I can keep it warm. An hour is fine, thank you. The door closed with a soft click. Isabel stood in the center of the room, her purse still clutched in her hands, and tried to process what had just happened. 3 hours ago, she'd been scanning groceries. Now she was standing in her ex-husband's mansion, pregnant with his child, having just agreed to stay in the house she'd sworn she'd never enter again. Her phone buzzed, a text from Sarah. You okay? That guy seemed intense. Intense, that was one word for it. Isabel typed back. I'm fine, I'm taking some personal time, I'll explain later. Another lie. She was collecting them like stones in her pockets. She moved to the balcony, pushed open the French doors. The garden stretched out below, meticulously maintained, bursting with late summer color. Beyond them, she could see the security wall, the gates, the guards making their rounds. A gilded cage, she'd called it once. That hadn't changed. But inside her, the baby moved. A flutter, a kick, a reminder that this wasn't just about her anymore. Whatever choices she made now, they affected another life. A life she'd created with the man downstairs who controlled empires and enemies with equal ease. She pressed her palm to her belly, felt another kick. I know, she whispered to the baby. I know this is complicated, but we'll figure it out, somehow. The sunset painted the sky in shades of amber and rose, beautiful and temporary, like everything else. Marcus found Luca in his study, standing at the window that overlooked the front drive. He hadn't moved in 20 minutes, just stood there, staring at nothing, lost in whatever thoughts occupied the mind of a man who'd just reclaimed what he thought he'd lost forever. She settled in the East Wing, Marcus reported. Mrs. Chen is bringing her dinner. Good. You want me to post security outside her door? No. Luca turned, the movement sharp. She's not a prisoner. I told her that. Right. She's a guest who can't leave. She can leave anytime she wants. Boss, with all due respect, we both know that's not true. Luca's jaw tightened. It's temporary. Just until the baby comes. Until I know they're both safe. And then what? Then we figure it out. Marcus had worked for Luca for 8 years. Had seen him negotiate with men who'd slit throats for less than what was on the table. Had watched him make decisions that would give other men nightmares. But he'd never seen his boss look as lost as he did right now. She's going to run again, Marcus said quietly, the second she gets a chance. I know. So what's the play? Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Make sure she doesn't want to. Isabel ate dinner on the balcony. Grilled salmon, roasted vegetables, quinoa salad that probably had more nutrients in one serving than she'd gotten all week at Morrison's. Mrs. Chen had outdone herself. Or maybe it just tasted better after months of ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. Afterward, she showered in the ensuite bathroom, all marble and expensive fixtures, and changed into the pajamas someone had thoughtfully left on the bed. They were new, tags still on, maternity cut, and exactly her size. Of course they were. She should be more disturbed by that. By the surveillance it implied, the knowledge Luca had maintained about her life. But she was too tired, too overwhelmed. The bed was obscenely comfortable, memory foam and Egyptian cotton and pillows that cradled her aching body like a blessing. She'd forgotten what it felt like to be truly comfortable. Sleep pulled at her, heavy and irresistible. But just before she drifted off, she heard it, footsteps in the hallway. Stopping outside her door. Standing there for a long moment before finally, quietly, walking away. Luca, checking on her, making sure she was safe. Even now, even after everything, part of her wanted to call out to him, wanted to open the door and face whatever this was between them head on, instead of hiding behind walls and closed doors. But she didn't. Instead, she closed her eyes and let exhaustion claim her, carrying her down into dreams where nothing was complicated and love didn't come with the price of freedom. Outside, security lights clicked on automatically, bathing the grounds in artificial daylight. Guards changed shifts. Cameras rotated on their mounts. The fortress went about its business of keeping the world at bay. And inside, in a room that smelled of lavender, Isabel Russo slept while her ex-husband stood watch over the life he'd lost and the child he was determined to claim. The first day was over. Tomorrow, the real conversation would begin. Isabel woke to sunlight streaming through sheer curtains and the disorienting sensation of not knowing where she was. The mattress beneath her was too soft, the sheets too expensive, the silence too complete. For a handful of seconds, she thought she was dreaming, that she'd wake up in her cramped apartment to the sound of her neighbors arguing through paper-thin walls. Then memory crashed back. The grocery store. Luca. The Mercedes. This room. She was in the estate. In his world again. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly, feeling the reassuring flutter of movement beneath her palm. The baby was awake too, doing whatever babies did at 7 months. Swimming, probably. Training for a marathon she wasn't prepared to run. The clock on the nightstand read 8:30. She never slept past 6 anymore. Her body had adjusted to early shifts and exhaustion. But apparently luxury had a sedative effect. A soft knock at the door made her tense. Miss Isabel? Mrs. Chen's voice, gentle and respectful. I have breakfast if you're awake. Isabel sat up slowly, her body protesting the movement in new and interesting ways. Pregnancy had turned her into an experiment in physics. Every action required calculation, counterbalance, strategic planning. Come in. Mrs. Chen entered carrying a tray that looked like something from a 5-star hotel. Fresh fruit, whole grain toast, scrambled eggs that were actually scrambled, and not the powdered cafeteria variety, orange juice in a crystal glass. You didn't have to bring it up, Isabel said, though her stomach growled traitorously at the sight of real food. Mr. DeMarco thought you might want to eat in privacy this morning. Mrs. Chen set the tray on the small table near the balcony doors. He's asked if you'll join him in his study at 10, if you're feeling up to it. Asked, not demanded. not commanded. The word choice felt deliberate. Tell him I'll be there. Mrs. Chen smiled, the expression warm and knowing. It's good to have you back, Miss Isabel. The house has been too quiet. After she left, Isabel picked at the breakfast while her mind spun through possible conversations. What did Luca want to discuss? Custody arrangements? Prenatal care? The fact that she'd hidden a pregnancy from him for 7 months? All of the above, probably. She dressed in clothes from her overnight bag, maternity jeans that had seen better days, a soft gray sweater that was starting to pill at the elbows. Then she caught sight of the closet. Curiosity won. She opened it. Rows of maternity clothes hung inside, tags still attached. Designer labels she recognized from window shopping she'd never been able to afford. Sizes that would fit her perfectly because, of course, Luca would know her size. Would have anticipated her needs before she'd even stepped through the door. The thoughtfulness of it made her throat tight. So did the presumption. She closed the closet without taking anything, wore her own clothes like armor, like a statement. She wasn't his to dress anymore, wasn't his to control. But the baby kicked again, reminding her that control was a complicated concept when two lives were tangled together by biology and history. The walk to Luca's study took her through hallways she'd once known by heart, past the formal dining room where they'd hosted dinners for people whose names she hadn't recognized, but whose power she'd felt like static in the air. Past the library where she'd spent quiet afternoons reading while Luca worked, back when she'd still believed he was just an importer with overseas connections. 2 security guards stood outside the study. They nodded at her respectfully, opened the doors without being asked. Luca sat behind a massive desk that looked like it had been salvaged from a Venetian palazzo. Probably had been. He was on the phone, speaking rapid Italian that she could only partially follow. Something about a shipment, about timing, about people who needed to be managed. He looked up when she entered, his eyes tracking her movement across the room. He held up one finger, "A minute, please," and finished his conversation with a few terse sentences that sounded like orders. When he hung up, he stood, gestured to the sitting area near the window rather than the formal chairs across from his desk. "Thank you for coming," he said, and the politeness was somehow worse than if he'd just commanded her presence. "Did I have a choice?" "You always have a choice, Isabel. I thought we established that yesterday." She settled into one of the leather armchairs, arranged herself as comfortably as pregnancy would allow. Luca took the chair across from her, close enough to talk but far enough to maintain respectful distance. "You slept well?" he asked. "Better than I have in months. The bed is—" She caught herself. "It's comfortable." "Good. I want you to be comfortable here." "Luca, let's not pretend this is a hotel stay. You brought me here because you found out about the baby, because you want control over the situation. Can we just be honest about what this is?" He leaned back, studied her with those dark eyes that missed nothing. "What do you think this is?" "A power play. You doing what you always do, making decisions for other people because you think you know what's best. And what would you have me do instead? Let you work yourself to exhaustion in a grocery store? Let you raise my child in an apartment that isn't safe? Pretend I don't know you're struggling? I was managing. You were surviving. There's a difference." The words hit harder than they should have because they were true. She had been barely surviving, each day a calculation of what she could afford to eat versus what the baby needed, whether she could skip a doctor's appointment to save money, how long she could ignore the leak in her ceiling before it became catastrophic. "I want to discuss logistics," Luca continued when she didn't respond. "I've arranged for Dr. Sarah Chen, no relation to Mrs. Chen, to see you. She's one of the best OBGYNs in the state. She can come here or you can go to her office, whichever you prefer." "I already have a doctor." "At the free clinic on 8th Street that has a 2-hour wait time and medical students who are still learning how to read an ultrasound?" He said it without judgment, just stating facts. "You deserve better care than that." It was fine. Fine. That word again. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, close enough that she could see the shadows under his eyes. He hadn't slept well. "Isabel, you can be angry at me. You can hate that I found you, hate that I brought you here. But don't punish yourself or our baby because you're trying to prove a point." "This isn't about proving a point." "Then what is it about?" She wanted to say independence, wanted to say pride, but sitting in this beautiful room, her body finally not aching from standing all day, her stomach full of actual nutritious food. The righteousness felt hollow. "It's about not owing you," she said quietly. "The second I accept your help, I'm in debt, and debts to you come with strings attached." Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. "Is that what you think? That I'd use our child as leverage?" "I think you'd do whatever it takes to get what you want. That's who you are." "And what do I want, Isabel?" The question hung between them, weighted with more than just words. What did Luca DeMarco want? Control of his empire, respect from his enemies, power that couldn't be questioned. But the way he was looking at her right now suggested something more complicated. "I want to know my child is safe," he said when she didn't answer. "I want to know you're both taken care of. Is that so terrible?" "It's not terrible. It's just conditional. You're taking care of us as long as we stay here, as long as I play by your rules." "What rules?" "I haven't given you any rules." "Not yet, but you will. That's how this works with you. Slowly. You'll start with reasonable requests. See this doctor, eat these meals, stay in these rooms. Then it'll escalate. Don't leave the grounds. Don't contact certain people. Don't make decisions without consulting me first." "You're describing a prison. Am I wrong?" He stood abruptly, moved to the window. Outside, gardeners tended to the roses. Beyond the walls, the world continued its oblivious rotation. "After you left," he said, his back to her, "I told myself it was for the best, that you deserved a normal life. Someone who came home at reasonable hours, who didn't have blood on his hands, who could give you the white picket fence fantasy. I never wanted a fantasy. I just wanted honesty." "I know." He turned to face her. "And I failed you in that. I kept secrets, did things you couldn't stomach, became someone you couldn't love." "I did love you." The admission came out softer than intended. "That was the problem. I loved you even after I found out what you really did. Even after I knew I should run, I wanted to stay. And that terrified me." The silence that followed felt alive, electric. All the things they'd never said during their divorce, too angry, too hurt, too proud, suddenly demanded air. "So you ran anyway," Luca said. "I ran because loving you meant compromising everything I believed in. You hurt people, Luca. You deal in things that destroy lives, and I can't be complicit in that. I protect people too. The businesses I control, the neighborhoods I oversee, they're safer because of what I do. The police can't help them. The system failed them. But I can. That's rationalization. That's reality." He moved closer, and she felt the shift in air pressure, the way space contracted around him. "You want to paint me as a villain? Fine. I've made peace with what I am. But don't pretend the world is black and white. Don't pretend the people you think are heroes don't have blood on their hands too. At least they have laws. Oversight. They don't just decide who lives and dies based on what? Justice? You think the courts serve justice, Isabel? You think the system works? I think it's better than one man deciding he's judge, jury, and executioner. Even when that man protects the innocent, stops the predators your precious system lets walk free." They were treading into old territory, the same arguments they'd had before, circular and unwinnable because they came from fundamentally different places. "This isn't productive," Isabel said, pressing her fingers to her temples where a headache was forming. "We can't change who we are or what we believe. We proved that already." Luca's jaw worked, tension evident in every line of his body. Then, visibly, he forced himself to relax. "You're right. I'm sorry." He returned to his chair, deliberate distance restored. "We're not here to rehash the past. We're here to discuss the future." "Okay, so discuss." "I want to be involved. With the pregnancy, with the birth, with raising our child. I want to know the due date, the doctor's appointments, the ultrasounds. I want to be there." "That's reasonable." "I also want you to stay here until the baby comes. After that, we can discuss other arrangements. But for the next 2 months, I need to know you're safe. And after? What happens after the baby comes?" He was quiet for a moment, choosing his words carefully. "That depends on you. If you want to leave, I won't stop you. But I'll want custody arrangements, legal documentation. regular access to my child. Split custody? Weekends and holidays? If that's what you want. Though the words sounded like they cost him something. Isabel's hand moved to her belly again, that unconscious gesture of protection. The baby kicked against her palm, and she wondered if it could sense the tension, the unspoken complications of the life waiting outside her womb. I need to think about it, she said finally. Take whatever time you need, but Isabel... He waited until she met his eyes. Know that whether you stay or go, whether you love me or hate me, I will be part of this child's life. That's non-negotiable. I never said you wouldn't be. Didn't you? When you hid the pregnancy for 7 months? The accusation stung because it was fair. She had planned to keep the baby a secret, had convinced herself it was protecting her child from Luca's world, when maybe, truthfully, she'd just been protecting herself from having to face him again. I was scared, she admitted, of what you'd do, of what you'd become to our child. And now? Now I'm still scared, but I'm also tired of running. Something shifted in his expression. Hope, maybe, or relief. That's a start. A knock at the door interrupted them. Marcus entered without waiting for permission, his face set in professional lines that didn't quite hide his urgency. Boss, we have a situation. Luca's entire demeanor changed. The man who'd been negotiating with his ex-wife vanished, replaced by something harder, more dangerous. What kind of situation? The Rossi family. They're making noise about the waterfront contracts. Vinny called, says they're not happy about being cut out. I'll handle it. He stood, already moving into whatever mental space he occupied when dealing with business. Then he caught himself, turned back to Isabel. I'm sorry. I need to take care of this. It's fine. I'll just... She gestured vaguely toward the door. Stay, please. I'll only be a few minutes. But she was already standing, already retreating towards safety and distance. Handle your business, Luca. I'll be in my room. She left before he could argue, Marcus holding the door for her with an expression that might have been sympathetic if he'd been anyone else. In the hallway, she heard their voices shift to Italian, rapid-fire and intense. The Rossi family. Waterfront contracts. The language of Luca's world, which had never stopped being his world just because she'd left it. Back in her room, Isabel stood at the balcony and watched the grounds. Guards patrolled. Cameras swept. The fortress maintained its vigilance against threats she couldn't see but knew existed. This was the life her child would inherit. Power and danger, wealth and violence, protection that came at the cost of freedom. She'd thought leaving Luca meant escaping that world. But biology had different plans. Her phone buzzed. Multiple texts from Sarah at the grocery store asking if she was okay, if she needed anything, if that man was bothering her. Sweet Sarah, who thought the biggest danger in Isabel's life was an overbearing ex-boyfriend. If only. She was drafting a response when the door opened without knocking. Luca strode in, his face darker than she'd seen it since yesterday. We have a problem, he said without preamble. What kind of problem? The kind where people know you're here. Word travels fast in my world, Isabel. The fact that my ex-wife showed up pregnant, people are talking. People who might see you as a weakness. I'm not your weakness. You are. You were the moment I put that ring on your finger, and you became it again the second you started carrying my child. He moved to the window, checked the sight lines with the practiced eye of someone who'd survived multiple assassination attempts. I'm increasing security. No one gets on the grounds without my explicit approval. Luca, you're being paranoid. I'm being careful. There's a difference. He turned to face her, and the intensity in his eyes made her breath catch. You don't understand what my world is like. What people would do if they thought they could hurt me by hurting you. Then maybe you should let me leave if I'm such a liability. You're not leaving. The words came out hard, absolute. Then softer. Please. Just until the baby comes. Let me keep you safe. The please broke something in her. Luca DeMarco didn't say please, didn't ask. Commanded and expected obedience. But he was asking her now, and the vulnerability in it was almost worse than his control. Fine, but I have conditions. Name them. I want internet access, my phone, my laptop, no restrictions. I want to be able to contact my friends, my former coworkers. I want them to know I'm okay. Done. I want to attend my doctor's appointments, My real doctor, not some stranger you've vetted. I'll send a security team with you. That's not non-negotiable. You want to leave the grounds, you take protection. That's the rule. She wanted to argue, but the look on his face said this was the line he wouldn't cross. His control in exchange for her illusion of freedom. Fine, 1 guard, not a team. 1. 2. And Marcus drives. 1 guard, Marcus drives, and I pick which appointments you attend. He considered this, calculating odds and risks in whatever algorithm governed his decisions. Agreed, but I want to be at the ultrasound. When you find out the gender, I want to be there. The request was so unexpectedly earnest that it caught her off guard. This was the man she'd fallen for, the one who existed underneath the criminal empire and the ruthless reputation, the one who wanted to see his child on a grainy ultrasound screen like any normal father. Okay, she said softly. You can come to that one. The tension in his shoulders eased slightly. Thank you. Don't thank me, it's your child too. Our child. He said it like a correction, like the word mattered. Our child, she agreed. The moment stretched between them, fragile and strange, almost peaceful. Then Luca's phone buzzed, shattering it. He glanced at the screen, his expression hardening. I need to go. The Rossi situation requires personal attention. Will you be gone long? Most of the day, probably. Maybe into the evening. He paused at the door. If you need anything, Mrs. Chen can get it for you. If there's an emergency, Marcus has instructions to contact me immediately. I'll be fine. I know you will. You're always fine. He said it with something that might have been admiration or frustration, or both. Then he left, taking his intensity and his complications with him. Isabel stood in the sudden quiet, her hand on her belly, and tried to figure out how her life had become this. How she'd gone from barely surviving to living in luxury prison in less than 24 hours. The baby kicked, a strong jab against her ribs that made her wince. I know, she murmured. I don't understand it either. The afternoon passed in strange suspension. Isabel explored the guest wing, finding rooms that had been prepared but never used. Bathrooms stocked with expensive toiletries, closets empty and waiting. Mrs. Chen brought lunch, a sandwich that wasn't from a vending machine, soup that tasted homemade because it was. How long have you known? Isabel asked as Mrs. Chen set down the tray. Known what, dear? That I was pregnant, that Luca knew where I was. Mrs. Chen's expression became carefully neutral. I make it a policy not to involve myself in Mr. DeMarco's private affairs. That's a diplomatic way of saying you knew. Perhaps. The housekeeper smoothed her apron, a nervous gesture that was unlike her. For what it's worth, he was very concerned about you, asked about you often, made sure you were safe even when you didn't know he was watching. That's supposed to make me feel better? That he's been surveilling me? That's supposed to make you understand that whatever else Luca DeMarco is, whatever darkness exists in his world, his feelings for you were never part of the performance. Before Isabel could respond, Mrs. Chen excused herself, leaving behind the food and the uncomfortable truth. The rest of the day crawled past. Isabel tried to read, tried to watch television, tried to do anything but think about the fact that she was back in this house, back in this life, back in Luca's orbit like a planet that couldn't escape its sun's gravity. By 6 o'clock, she was restless. She ventured downstairs, found the library, pulled books at random without really reading them. The house felt enormous and empty without Luca's presence, as if he was the thing that gave it life and purpose. Marcus found her there around 7. Boss says he won't be back until late. Wants to know if you need anything. I'm fine. You've been in here for 2 hours, staring at the same page. She looked down, realized he was right. She'd been holding a book about Italian Renaissance art without actually seeing any of it. Just thinking, she said. About? Whether I made a mistake coming here. Whether I should have fought harder to stay away. Marcus leaned against the doorframe, the posture casual even though nothing about him was ever truly relaxed. Can I speak freely? Have I ever stopped you? Boss is different with you, always was. When you left, something in him shut down. He was functional, effective, but cold. Like the human part checked out and just left the machine running. I'm not responsible for his emotional state, Marcus. Didn't say you were. Just saying that seeing him today, seeing him with you back here, It's the first time in 9 months I've seen him actually alive instead of just going through the motions. That doesn't change what he is, what he does. No, it doesn't. Marcus straightened, professional mask sliding back into place. But maybe it changes what he could become. For the right reason. He left before she could unpack that statement, before she could explain that she wasn't here to save Luca from himself, wasn't here to be his redemption arc. She was just here because she didn't have anywhere else to go. Dinner came and went. Isabel ate in her room again, watched the sun set over the gardens, tried to reconcile the strange duality of feeling both trapped and safe. Around 10, she heard a car in the drive, footsteps in the hall, a pause outside her door. She held her breath, waiting for the knock. It didn't come. After a moment, the footsteps continued down the hall to what she knew was the master suite. Luca checking on her without disturbing her, respecting the boundaries they'd established. It should have made her feel better. Instead, it made her feel lonely. Isabel changed into pajamas, her own, not the expensive ones in the closet, and climbed into bed. But sleep wouldn't come. Her mind spun through conversations and complications, through what-ifs and how did we get here's. Around midnight, unable to take the restlessness anymore, she got up, wandered the quiet house in bare feet, moving through shadows and moonlight. The kitchen was dark except for the light over the stove. She found chamomile tea, heated water, tried to create some ritual of normalcy. Couldn't sleep either? She spun, nearly dropping the mug. Luca stood in the doorway, still dressed but disheveled. Tie gone, shirt partially unbuttoned, hair messed from running his hands through it. He looked exhausted. Human. "I didn't mean to startle you," he said. "It's fine. She gestured with the mug. "Tea. Mind if I join you?" She should say yes, should maintain distance and boundaries, but the house was too quiet, and she was too tired of being alone with her thoughts. "Sure." He moved to the cabinet, pulled down his own mug, poured coffee that had probably been sitting since afternoon. They stood in the kitchen like strangers, like two people who'd never promised forever to each other, never broken those promises into sharp pieces. "How was your day?" he asked, the question absurdly domestic. "Strange. Quiet? I finished 3 books without remembering any of them." "That productive, huh? How about you? Did you handle the Rossi situation?" "For now. Vinny Rossi is an idiot, but he's a connected idiot. Had to remind him why cutting him out was actually in his best interest." Did that reminder involve threats? It involved facts presented in a way he couldn't ignore. Luca took a sip of his terrible coffee, grimaced. "I don't want to talk about business." "What do you want to talk about?" "Names?" "What?" "For the baby. Have you thought about names?" The shift in conversation was so unexpected that Isabel nearly laughed. "A little. Nothing decided." "What were you considering?" She hesitated, unsure if sharing this felt too intimate, too much like building something together. But his eyes were tired and earnest, and the late hour made everything feel softer. For a boy, maybe Gabriel, or Noah. For a girl, Sofia, or Elena. Italian names. "Half Italian baby," she pointed out. "Gabriel DeMarco." He tested it, rolling the syllables. "I like it. We don't know it's a boy yet, but if it is, then maybe. If you want input, you'll have to come to more than just the gender ultrasound." "I will. Whatever appointments you'll let me attend, I'll be there." The sincerity in his voice undid something in her chest. This was the Luca she'd fallen for, the one who existed in quiet moments, who showed up and meant it. "Why did you marry me?" The question came out before she could stop it. "Really? You could have had anyone. Someone who understood your world, who could handle it. Why choose someone like me?" Luca set down his coffee, considered the question with the gravity it deserved. "Because you saw me. Not the power, not the reputation, just me. When you looked at me, I wasn't the heir to an empire or the man people feared. I was just Luca. And now? Now when you look at me, you see a monster." He said it matter-of-factly, like stating a truth that didn't need embellishment. "That's not—" she started, then stopped because it was partially true. "I see both. The man I loved and the man whose world I couldn't live in. They exist in the same person, and I don't know how to reconcile that." "Maybe you don't have to." Maybe you just have to decide if the man is worth the complications. Is that what you're hoping? That proximity will change my mind? I'm hoping that time will let us figure out what comes next. Without pressure, without expectations. He moved closer, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. I'm hoping that maybe we can be friends, Isabel. Co-parents? People who care about each other even if we can't be together. The word friends sounded wrong applied to them. Too simple for the complexity of what they'd been, what they still were. I don't know if we know how to be just friends, she admitted. Then we'll learn. The baby chose that moment to kick, hard enough that Isabel gasped. Her hand flew to her belly, and without thinking, Luca's followed. Can I? He asked, his palm hovering over where hers rested. She nodded, unable to speak past the sudden tightness in her throat. His hand settled against her belly, warm and gentle. They stood like that, connected by the life between them, and waited. The baby kicked again. A strong jab directly under Luca's palm. His expression transformed, wonder and shock and something that looked like fear. That's your child, Isabel finished, saying hello. My child. He said it with reverence, with the weight of someone understanding something for the first time. His other hand joined the first, cradling her belly like it contained the entire world. Our child. The moment stretched, intimate and overwhelming. Isabel knew she should step back, reestablish distance, but his hands were gentle and his eyes held tears he was too proud to let fall, and she couldn't bring herself to break this. I'll do better, Luca whispered. I swear to you, Isabel, I'll be better. For this baby. For you. Whatever it takes. Luca, I know I can't change what I am, can't walk away from my world, but I can be better within it. I can choose mercy over vengeance, protection over punishment. I can try. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that people could change, that love could redeem, that their child could be the catalyst for transformation. But wanting wasn't enough. And promises made in late-night kitchens had a way of dissolving in daylight. We'll see, she said quietly. We'll see. He nodded, understanding the non-answer for what it was. Slowly, reluctantly, he pulled his hands away. You should sleep, he said. You look exhausted. So do you. Occupational hazard. He managed a tired smile. Good night, Isabel. Good night, Luca. She left him in the kitchen with his terrible coffee and his promises, climbed the stairs to her borrowed room, and tried not to think about how natural it had felt to stand with his hands on her belly, their child moving between them. Tried not to think about how much she wanted to believe that people like Luca DeMarco could change. Tried not to think about what it would cost her if she let herself hope. Outside, security lights blazed against the darkness. Guards maintained their vigilance. The fortress kept its watch. And inside, two people who'd loved and lost each other tried to figure out how to exist in the strange space between past and future, between what they'd been and what they might become. The baby kicked one more time before Isabel fell asleep, a reminder that whatever else was uncertain, this child was real and coming and would change everything, whether they were ready or not. The days that followed developed a rhythm that felt almost normal if Isabel didn't think too hard about the armed guards or the fact that she couldn't leave without an escort. She woke to sunlight and breakfast trays, spent mornings reading in the library or walking the gardens under Marcus's watchful eye. Afternoons passed in that strange suspension of waiting, for the baby, for answers, for whatever came next. Luca kept his distance, mostly. He left early for business she didn't ask about, and returned late smelling of cigar smoke and expensive whiskey. But he checked on her. Always. A knock at her door before he retired, a text during the day asking if she needed anything. Small gestures that felt both considerate and suffocating. It was the fourth morning when everything shifted. Isabel was finishing breakfast on the balcony when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her click accept. Isabel Russo? A male voice, unfamiliar, with an accent she couldn't quite place. Who is this? An old friend. Well, friend of a friend. Adrian Cole sends his regards. The name hit her like ice water. Adrian. Her ex-boyfriend from college, the relationship that had ended 2 years before she'd met Luca. They'd parted amicably, stayed in occasional contact through social media, the kind of friendly distance that suggested no hard feelings. "I haven't talked to Adrian in years," she said carefully. "How did you get this number?" "That's not important. What's important is that Adrian has been trying to reach you. Says you two need to talk about old times, about timing." Something in the way he said timing made her stomach clench. "I don't understand." "He thinks you might, says to tell you he did the math. 9 months ago, you and he reconnected in Chicago, had drinks, spent the evening catching up." The voice paused, letting the implications sink in. "Says to tell you he counted backwards from when he saw the pregnancy announcement." "What pregnancy announcement?" "I didn't announce anything?" Social media is a funny thing. Someone posted a photo from Morrison's grocery, tagged you, speculation spread, Adrian saw it, started thinking about Chicago. Isabel's mind raced. Chicago. She had gone to Chicago 9 months ago, right after leaving Luca. Had needed to get away, clear her head. Adrian had been there for a conference. They'd run into each other at a hotel bar, had drinks, dinner, spent hours talking about their lives. And then, no. It had just been dinner, conversation. She'd gone back to her hotel alone, woken up the next morning, and driven home. Hadn't she? The night was fuzzy. She'd been drinking, not heavily, but enough. Had been emotionally raw, devastated from the divorce. The details felt slippery, like trying to hold water. "I need to speak with Adrian directly," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "He'd like that. But there's a complication. See, Adrian's a respected guy, successful, getting married next month, finding out he might have a kid with an ex-girlfriend. That's messy. Bad for his image, bad for his engagement. What do you want?" "Just a conversation. You, Adrian, maybe a paternity test to clear things up. Settle it quiet-like before word gets around and things get complicated for everyone." The baby is Luca DeMarco's." She said it with conviction she needed to feel. "Maybe. But Adrian wants to be sure. And I think you want to be sure too, don't you? I can hear it in your voice. That little doubt. I'm not discussing this with a stranger. Tell Adrian to call me himself. Adrian's a careful man. Doesn't make calls that could be traced back to him. But he'll be at the Riverside Hotel tomorrow, 2 p.m., room 412. Come alone. Have a conversation. Get some clarity." "I'm not going anywhere alone." "Then bring your security. Bring your ex-husband if you want." "But Isabel?" The voice dropped, became almost gentle. "You've been running from hard truths for a while now. Maybe it's time to stop." The line went dead. Isabel sat frozen, her untouched breakfast growing cold, her mind spinning through implications and memories and terrible possibilities. The Chicago trip had been 9 months ago, right after the divorce, right in the window when... No, she'd been with Luca then. They'd been separated but not officially divorced for another 2 weeks. The night before she'd left for Chicago, Luca had shown up at the apartment she'd been staying at. They'd fought, and then the fight had dissolved into something else, the way their arguments always had. Desperation and familiarity, and one last time that had felt like goodbye. That had to be when she'd gotten pregnant. That night with Luca, not some fuzzy evening in Chicago she could barely remember. But what if she was wrong? Her hands shook as she pulled up her phone's calendar, started counting backwards from her due date. The dates aligned with that last night with Luca, but they also aligned with Chicago, depending on exactly when conception had occurred. The margin of error was narrow, but it existed. She needed to think, needed to process this without... Isabel? She looked up. Luca stood in the doorway to her room, and the expression on his face said he knew something was wrong. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough to see you've gone pale." What happened? She should tell him, should explain about the call, about Adrian, about the terrible seed of doubt that had been planted. But looking at Luca, at the concern in his eyes, the way he'd started to soften around her, the tentative peace they'd built, she couldn't destroy it. Not yet. Not until she had answers. Nothing. Just morning sickness. It passes. He didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. "I came to remind you about the ultrasound. This afternoon at 3. Dr. Chen's office. The ultrasound. The appointment where they'd find out the baby's sex. Where they'd see their child on the screen and make it real in a way that went beyond kicks and morning sickness. Or maybe, possibly, where she'd see the child that might not be theirs after all. "I remember," she managed. "I'll be ready." "Are you sure you're okay? You look—" "I'm fine, Luca. Really, just tired." He studied her for a long moment, that penetrating gaze that had always seen too much. But whatever he saw, he chose not to challenge it. "I'll have Marcus bring the car around at 2:30. We can grab lunch first if you want." "Sure. That sounds good." After he left, Isabel sat with her phone clutched in her hand and tried to figure out what the hell she was supposed to do. The Riverside Hotel, tomorrow at 2. Adrian wanting answers. A stranger implying things that couldn't be true but might be. She needed to know for certain, needed to look Adrian in the eye and remember that night in Chicago, needed to confirm that nothing had happened beyond dinner and conversation. But going alone was impossible. Luca would never allow it. And if she told him about the call, about Adrian's claims, it would destroy the fragile trust they'd rebuilt. He'd rage, investigate, possibly hurt people in his pursuit of truth. That's who he was, how he operated, unless she could handle it herself first, get answers privately, confirm what she already knew, that the baby was Luca's, and make this all go away before it became a problem. The morning crawled past in agonizing slowness. Isabel tried to read, to distract herself, but the words blurred together. At noon, Mrs. Chen brought lunch. At 2:30, Marcus appeared with the car keys. Luca met her in the foyer, changed from his business suit into something more casual, dark jeans, a charcoal sweater that made his eyes even darker. He looked less like a crime boss and more like the man she'd fallen for. It made everything harder. "Ready?" he asked, offering his arm. She took it because refusing would raise questions. They walked to the car together, Marcus holding doors and maintaining professional silence. The drive to Dr. Chen's office took 20 minutes through afternoon traffic. Luca spent it on his phone, handling business in clipped Italian that sounded like instructions. Isabel spent it staring out the window and trying not to think about hotel rooms and paternity tests and the way certainty could dissolve with a single phone call. Dr. Chen's office was in a medical building downtown, all glass and steel and the kind of expensive that screamed exclusive clientele. The waiting room had exactly 2 other patients, both women who looked like they'd stepped out of magazine spreads, old money meeting new pregnancy. The receptionist smiled warmly when she saw them. "Mr. and Mrs. DeMarco, Dr. Chen is ready for you." Isabel didn't correct the missus. What was the point? The examination room was nicer than any medical space she'd been in before. Soft lighting, comfortable furniture, equipment that looked like it cost more than her old apartment. Dr. Chen herself was in her 40s, professional but warm, with kind eyes that had probably seen every kind of pregnancy drama imaginable. "Isabel, it's wonderful to finally meet you. Lucas told me so much." She shook hands, gestured to the examination table. "Let's take a look at this baby, shall we?" The process was familiar by now, the cold gel on her belly, the ultrasound wand pressing against her skin, the screen that would show shapes and shadows that somehow translated to human life. Luca stood beside her, his hand finding hers and squeezing gently. On the screen, their baby materialized in grainy black and white. "There's the head," Dr. Chen narrated, moving the wand. "Beautiful development. And here's the heart. See it beating? Strong and steady. Everything looks perfect." Isabel's throat tightened. Perfect. This baby was perfect. Real. Hers. Theirs. "Would you like to know the sex?" Dr. Chen asked. Isabel looked at Luca. He looked back at her, and something passed between them. A question, a confirmation, a shared moment that felt like it belonged to the people they'd been before everything got complicated. "Yes," they said together. "Doctor." Chen smiled, moved the wand slightly. "Congratulations. You're having a boy." "A boy." Isabel felt tears spring to her eyes unbidden. A son. Gabriel, maybe. Or Noah. A little person who would have Luca's dark eyes and her stubbornness and a whole life ahead of him. Luca's hand tightened on hers, and when she glanced at him, she saw his eyes were wet too. "A son," he whispered, his voice rough with emotion. "We're having a son." "Doctor." Chen printed images, provided information about the next steps, scheduled another appointment for 4 weeks out. Isabel absorbed it all mechanically, her mind split between the joy of seeing her baby and the terrible doubt eating at her certainty. What if this child wasn't Luca's? What if Adrian's math was right and hers was wrong? What if she'd destroyed any chance at reconciliation over a pregnancy that would prove she'd moved on faster than she'd admitted? In the car on the way back, Luca couldn't stop looking at the ultrasound photos. We should start thinking about the nursery. What colors do you want? Traditional blue or something else? I don't know, maybe gray with yellow accents? Whatever you want. We can hire a designer, or you can do it yourself if you prefer. The normalcy of the conversation felt surreal. They were discussing nursery colors while her entire world was potentially crumbling. Tomorrow, she'd meet Adrian. Tomorrow, she'd get answers. And then, Isabel? Luca's voice pulled her back. You're doing it again. Going somewhere else in your head. What's wrong? Nothing. I'm just processing. It's a lot. Finding out we're having a son. We don't have to decide everything today. Take your time. But time was the one thing she didn't have. Tomorrow. The Riverside Hotel. 2 p.m. That night, Isabel barely touched her dinner. She pleaded exhaustion, retreated to her room early, but sleep wouldn't come. She lay in the dark, one hand on her belly, feeling her son move and wondering whose features he'd inherit. Around midnight, she heard Luca's footsteps in the hall. The pause outside her door, but tonight the pause stretched longer. Then, a soft knock. Isabel, are you awake? She could pretend to be asleep. Should pretend. But something made her answer. I'm awake. The door opened. Luca stood silhouetted in the hallway light, still dressed, looking like he'd been wrestling with his own thoughts. Can I come in? She sat up, pulled the blanket around herself. Sure. He entered but kept his distance, leaning against the wall near the door. I keep thinking about today, about seeing our son on that screen, about how real it all suddenly became. I know, me too. And I keep thinking about what I'm bringing him into, my world, my life. All the things you left me to escape. Luca, let me finish, please. He dragged a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration she recognized. I want to be better for him. Want to give him something different than what I had. My father raised me to take over the empire, to be hard, to choose power over everything else, and I don't want that for our son. Our son. The words should bring comfort. Instead, they twisted the knife of her uncertainty. What are you saying? She asked quietly. I'm saying I want to try, really try, to be the kind of father he can be proud of, the kind of man you could... He stopped, shook his head. The kind of man who deserves a family. The vulnerability in his voice broke something in her. This was Luca without armor, without the ruthless mask he showed the world. This was the man she'd loved. And she was lying to him. About Adrian. About the doubt. About tomorrow. You'll be a good father, she said, and meant it even as guilt churned in her stomach. Whatever else is true, I know that. Will I? My only examples are men who taught me violence, who showed me that love is weakness and mercy is failure. You're already better than them. You're here. You're trying. That's more than most men in your position would do. He moved closer, sat on the edge of the bed, careful to maintain space, but close enough that she could see his expression in the dim light from the hallway. I need to tell you something, he said. About Chicago. Her heart stopped. What about Chicago? I know you went there, right after we separated. I know you needed space, needed to clear your head. He paused, seemed to be choosing words carefully. And I know Adrian Cole was there, that you met him for dinner. The room felt suddenly airless. You were having me followed. I was making sure you were safe. There's a difference. Not from where I'm sitting. Isabel, I didn't care that you had dinner with an ex-boyfriend. You were free. We were done. You had every right to move on. Then why bring it up now? His jaw tightened. Because I got a call today. From someone asking questions about you and Adrian, about timing, about the baby. The world tilted. What kind of questions? The kind that implied maybe the pregnancy timeline was more complicated than I thought. The kind designed to plant doubt. And did they? Plant doubt? Luca met her eyes, and the intensity there stole her breath. No, Basu, because I know when our son was conceived. The night before you left for Chicago, the night I showed up at your apartment, and He stopped. the memory clearly as vivid for him as it was for her. I know he's mine, Isabel. No question. She wanted to share his certainty, wanted to believe that the timeline was clear and the doubt was manufactured. But that phone call this morning, Adrian's claims, the fuzzy edges of her memory. What if you're wrong? The words came out barely above a whisper. What if the timeline isn't as clear as you think? The silence that followed was deafening. She watched Luca process the question, saw his expression shift from certainty to confusion to something that looked like pain. Are you telling me? He started, his voice dangerously quiet. I'm telling you I need to be sure. We both need to be sure. I am sure. But I'm not. The admission cost her, but it was true. That night in Chicago with Adrian, I don't remember all of it clearly. I was drinking, I was emotional, and the next morning I just assumed nothing happened. But what if I'm wrong? What if there's even a small possibility that… Stop! Luca stood abruptly, and the movement was sharp enough to make her flinch. You're saying you might have slept with him. I'm saying I don't remember, and that terrifies me. Jesus Christ, Isabel. He turned away, hands fisted at his sides, every line of his body radiating tension. So what, you want a paternity test? Want to confirm what I already know? Would that be so terrible, to have proof? To be absolutely certain? It would be an insult. To me. To what we had. To our son. Or it would be responsible, making sure before we build everything on an assumption that might be wrong. He spun back to face her, and the anguish in his eyes made her chest ache. I held your hand today while we saw our son on that screen. Our son, Isabel. And now you're telling me you're not even sure he's mine? I'm telling you, I got a phone call that raised questions I can't ignore. That Adrian thinks there's a possibility, that I need answers. Who called you? I don't know. Someone representing Adrian. And you didn't think to tell me, to let me handle it? Because this is exactly what you do. Get angry, make threats, turn it into something violent when it doesn't have to be. It's already violent. His voice dropped to something cold and dangerous. Someone is questioning my child's paternity, trying to undermine what we're building here. You think I'm going to let that stand? I think you're going to turn this into a war when what we need is a simple blood test. There's nothing simple about it. He moved to the door, every movement controlled fury. But fine. You want certainty? We'll get certainty. I'll arrange for a prenatal paternity test. We can have results in 3 days. Luca, don't. Just don't. He paused in the doorway, his back to her. I thought we were making progress. Thought maybe we could find our way back to something that resembled trust. But you've been doubting this whole time. Doubting me. Doubting us. That's not fair. Fair? He laughed, bitter and sharp. You're carrying what I thought was my child, and you're telling me it might be another man's. Tell me what's fair about that. Tomorrow she'd still meet Adrian, still get her answers. The paternity test Luca would arrange would take 3 days. 3 days of living in this house with his doubt and her guilt, waiting for science to confirm what her heart wanted to believe, that her son was Luca's, that the night in Chicago was nothing, that certainty was possible. Outside her window, security lights blazed, guards maintained their watch. The fortress stood against the darkness, but inside the foundations had started to crack, and Isabel didn't know if anything could hold them together when the truth finally came to light. She pressed her hand to her belly, felt her son's familiar kick. I'm sorry, she whispered to him. I'm so sorry. But sorry didn't change the doubt, didn't erase the questions, didn't make the next 3 days any less terrifying. Tomorrow she'd face Adrian. Tonight, she'd face the fact that she might have just destroyed the last chance at the family she'd secretly started to hope for. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, almost angry, as if even he knew that something fundamental had shifted and nothing would ever be quite the same again. Sleep never came. Isabel lay in the darkness, watching shadows crawl across the ceiling, her mind replaying Luca's expression when she'd voiced her doubt. The pain in his eyes. The way his entire body had gone rigid with betrayal. She'd hurt him, not with infidelity, but with uncertainty, which might be worse. By 6 a.m., she gave up pretending. Showered, dressed in clothes that felt like armor, jeans, a loose sweater, boots that grounded her. Today she'd meet Adrian. Today she'd get answers. And then maybe, possibly, she could undo some of the damage from last night. Mrs. Chen was already in the kitchen when Isabel came down, moving through her morning routine with the precision of decades. She looked up when Isabel entered, and something in her expression said she knew. Of course she knew. In a house like this, secrets lasted about as long as ice in summer. "Coffee?" Mrs. Chen asked, though her tone made it clear she already knew the answer was no. Pregnancy had turned coffee from pleasure to nausea. "Just tea, thank you." "Mr. DeMarco left early this morning. Said he had business to handle." Business, right. Because that's what Luca did when emotions got complicated, retreated into the world he could control. "Did he say when he'd be back?" "No, dear. But he left instructions that you're to have anything you need. Marcus is available if you want to go anywhere." Anywhere. Like the Riverside Hotel at 2 p.m. to meet her ex-boyfriend who might be the father of her child. Perfect. Isabel took her tea to the library, tried to read, failed miserably. The morning stretched like taffy, each minute expanding until she thought she'd scream. At noon, she texted Marcus. "I need to go out. Can you drive me at 1:30? His response came immediately. "Where to?" "Riverside Hotel. I have a meeting." A pause. Then, "Does the boss know about this meeting?" She could lie. Could tell Marcus that Luca approved, but lies were what had gotten them here in the first place. "No. But I need to go anyway. It's important." Another pause, longer this time. "I'll have the car ready at 1:30, but I'm texting him." Fair enough? Let Luca know. Let him rage and worry and do whatever he needed to do. She was going to get her answers. She changed clothes 3 times before settling on the first outfit. There was no dressing for this occasion, no right way to look when confronting your past about a pregnancy that might rewrite your future. At 1:25, she came downstairs to find Marcus waiting by the Mercedes, his expression professionally neutral in a way that screamed disapproval. "Boss isn't happy," he said as he opened her door. "I didn't think he would be. He wanted to come. I talked him out of it. Told him sending armed backup to your meeting probably wasn't the play." "Thank you for that." "Don't thank me yet. He's got people watching the hotel. You're not going in there without surveillance." She should be angry about that. Should fight for privacy and autonomy. But honestly, the idea of Luca's people watching made her feel safer, which was its own kind of complicated. The Riverside Hotel was exactly the kind of place Adrian would choose. Upscale without being ostentatious. The kind of establishment that catered to business travelers with expense accounts and discretion. Marcus pulled up to the entrance, killed the engine. "Room 412, Isabel said. "I shouldn't be more than an hour. I'll be right here. You need me, you text. 1 word, my name, and I'm coming up. I'll be fine." "You don't know that. This guy, whoever he is, he's playing games, making accusations. That's not someone who wants a friendly conversation. He's not dangerous. Adrian's a..." She searched for the right word. "He's a corporate attorney. The most dangerous thing about him is his golf handicap." "Right. And I'm sure that's why he sent some anonymous messenger to contact you instead of just calling himself." Marcus had a point. But she was here now, and turning back wasn't an option. The hotel lobby was generic luxury. Marble floors, uncomfortable modern furniture, the smell of expensive coffee, and other people's business trips. Isabel found the elevators, rode to the 4th floor with a businessman who didn't look up from his phone. Room 412 was at the end of a long hallway that felt too quiet, too removed. She knocked before she could overthink it. The door opened immediately, as if he'd been waiting on the other side, and there was Adrian Cole, exactly as she remembered, and somehow different. Same sandy hair, same blue eyes, same preppy handsomeness that had attracted her in college. But older now, more polished, wearing a suit that probably cost what she used to make in a month. "Isabel." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you for coming." "Did I have a choice?" "Everyone has choices. Come in. Please." She stepped into the hotel room, hyper-aware of how vulnerable this made her. But the room was empty except for Adrian. No mysterious messenger, no backup, just a man and a conversation that needed to happen. "I'm going to be direct," Adrian said, closing the door but not moving closer. "Because I think we're past the point of small talk." "Good. I prefer direct." 9 months ago, you and I had dinner in Chicago. Do you remember that night? I remember having dinner, catching up. You told me about your promotion, your engagement. I told you about my divorce. And after dinner? This was where her memory got fuzzy. They'd had wine, several glasses. She'd been emotional, raw from the separation from Luca. Adrian had been kind, sympathetic. They talked for hours. I remember going back to my hotel, she said carefully. Alone. Are you sure about that? What are you implying, Adrian? He moved to the desk, pulled out his phone, tapped the screen a few times. I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you what I remember. We had dinner. We drank. You were upset. I offered to walk you back to your hotel. You invited me up for one more drink. We talked. He paused, met her eyes. We slept together, Isabel. And you're telling me you don't remember. The words hit like a physical blow. She wanted to deny it, wanted to call him a liar, but his expression held something that looked like genuine confusion, and her memory of that night was Swiss cheese, full of holes she'd never bothered to examine. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? Walk me through it. We had dinner, we talked. I went back to my hotel. I woke up the next morning and drove home. Do you remember getting undressed? Getting into bed? Setting your alarm? She tried to pull up those specific memories and found only blank space. She remembered the hotel room, a generic space like this one, but not the act of returning to it, not the routine of preparing for sleep. How drunk was I? She asked quietly. Drunk enough that I should have known better. Adrian ran a hand through his hair, the gesture tired. I'm not proud of it, Isabel. You were vulnerable. I don't know what I was. Stupid, selfish. We made a mistake. And now you think the baby is yours. I think the timing is suspicious. I think you left your husband, slept with me, and found out you were pregnant. And I think you assumed it was his because that was easier than considering alternatives. I was with Luca the night before I left for Chicago. I know, I did the research, talked to a friend in the medical field. Conception can happen anywhere in a 5-day window around ovulation. If you and Luca were together on day 1 of that window, and you and I were together on day 3, it could go either way. Isabel felt the room spin. This couldn't be happening. She'd built everything, her certainty, her choices, her fragile peace with Luca, on the foundation of knowing whose child she carried, and now that foundation was crumbling. Why didn't you contact me sooner? Why wait until now? Because I didn't know until I saw that photo. Someone tagged you from Morrison's grocery, mentioned you looked pregnant. I did the math, and it lined up too perfectly to ignore. He pocketed his phone, finally moved closer. I'm getting married, Isabel, to someone I love. Someone who doesn't know about Chicago. And if this baby is mine, I need to know before I stand at that altar and promise forever. What about what I need, what the baby needs? That's why I'm here, to figure that out, together. By sending some anonymous messenger to threaten me? Adrian frowned. What messenger? I didn't send anyone. I left you a voicemail yesterday, gave you this room number. That's it. Someone called me, said they were representing you, said things about Adrian Cole wanting answers about paternity. His confusion looked genuine. I don't know who that was, but it wasn't anyone I sent. I wanted to handle this privately, just you and me, which meant someone else knew. Someone was stirring this pot intentionally, creating chaos for reasons Isabel couldn't begin to understand. I need to sit down, she said, the room tilting slightly. Adrian guided her to the desk chair, professional and careful not to touch more than necessary. Can I get you water? Are you okay? I'm pregnant and just found out I might have slept with my ex-boyfriend while blackout drunk. How okay can I be? Fair point. He grabbed a bottle of water from the minibar, handed it to her. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For that night, for the confusion, for all of it. If I could go back and make different choices, but you can't. No one can. No. So instead we deal with what is, which brings me to why I really asked you here. He pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. Prenatal paternity test kit. Completely safe, just a blood draw. We can have results in 48 hours. Isabel stared at the envelope like it was a live grenade. Luca's already arranging one. Then we'll have 2. Belt and suspenders. But Isabel, he crouched down to eye level with her. I need to know. If this baby is mine, I need to be prepared. Financially, legally, emotionally. I need to tell my fiancé before someone else does. I need to figure out what kind of father I can be from outside a relationship. And if the baby's not yours, then I disappear. Leave you and Luca alone. Apologize for the disruption and move on with my life. It sounded so simple when he said it like that. A test. Results. Clarity. But Isabel knew better. Knew that knowledge came with consequences. That some truths couldn't be unknown once spoken. I need to think about this. We don't have time to think. Every day that passes is another day you and Luca build something that might be based on a lie. Every day I keep this from my fiancé is another betrayal. We need answers, Isabel. Now. Her phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. Everything okay up there? She typed back, fine. Need a few more minutes. Then another text. This one from Luca. Whatever he's telling you, don't believe him until we have proof. So he knew she was here. Was probably losing his mind somewhere, trying to decide whether to storm the hotel or trust her to handle it. I'll do the test, she said finally. But the results come to me first. I tell Luca on my terms, in my time. Not you, not your messenger, not anyone else. Understood? Understood. I'll set it up for tomorrow morning. Discreet clinic, no questions asked. I'll text you the address. She stood, suddenly desperate to be out of this room, away from Adrian and his revelations, and the terrible possibility that everything she thought she knew was wrong. I need to go. Isabel, wait. He caught her arm gently, released it immediately when she tensed. I really am sorry. About all of it. You deserve better than what I did that night. We both made choices, even if I don't remember making them. The hallway felt too long on the walk back to the elevator. Too much time to think, to spiral, to imagine worst-case scenarios. The businessman from earlier was gone. She rode down alone, watching floor numbers descend like a countdown to detonation. Marcus was waiting exactly where she'd left him, the Mercedes idling at the curb. He took one look at her face and opened the door without comment. They were 3 blocks away before he spoke. Bad meeting? Complicated meeting? Boss is going to want details. Boss is going to have to wait until I have details to give. You know that won't fly, right? You walking into a hotel to meet some guy, coming out looking like someone died. He's going to push. Then he can push. I'm not ready to talk about it yet. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Then, for what it's worth, whatever's happening, whatever you're dealing with, the boss, he's steady, loyal. He'll stand by you through whatever this is. Even if this is me telling him his son might not be his, the silence that followed was answer enough. They pulled through the estate gates 20 minutes later. Isabel went straight to her room, ignored Mrs. Chen's concerned looks, locked the door behind her, and finally let herself break down. Tears came hard and fast, 9 months of fear and uncertainty and desperate hope finally crashing over her like a wave. She'd been so certain, so convinced that her son was Luca's, that the night in Chicago was nothing, that she could build a future on the foundation of that certainty. And now that certainty was gone, replaced by a terrible 50-50 chance that would destroy everything. Her phone rang. Luca. She let it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. Again, she ignored it. The third time, she turned it off completely. She needed time, space, a chance to process before facing his questions and his anger and his, what? Disappointment? Betrayal? The knowledge that she'd possibly slept with someone else days after their last night together? A knock at the door made her jump. Isabel? Luca's voice, carefully controlled. Open the door. I need time. You need to talk to me. Marcus said you met with someone. Said you came back upset. Whatever happened in that hotel room, we deal with it together. I can't. Her voice broke. I can't do this right now. Then when? When you've convinced yourself that whatever he told you is truth? When you've built up walls I can't break through? When I have answers? She pressed her palm against the door, imagining him on the other side doing the same. I need answers before I can have this conversation. Then let me help you get them. Whatever questions you have, whatever doubts, we face them together. That's not how this works. That's exactly how this works when you're carrying my child. What if I'm not? The words came out raw, desperate. What if the baby isn't yours, Luca? What if I was wrong about the timing, wrong about everything, and our son is actually... She couldn't finish, couldn't say Adrian's name, couldn't make it that real. The silence from the other side of the door was deafening. When Luca finally spoke, his voice was so quiet she almost didn't hear it. Is that what he told you? That the baby is his? He told me we slept together in Chicago. That night I can't remember clearly. And that the timing means it could go either way. Another silence. This one sharp enough to cut. Do you believe him? I don't know. I don't remember. And that's the problem. I can't say with certainty that nothing happened because there's this gap in my memory where anything could have happened. So we do the test. Get proof. End the speculation. I'm doing a test tomorrow. Adrian's arranging it. Absolutely not. The door handle rattled as Luca tried it, found it locked. You're not going to some clinic he's chosen with results that go through him first. They come to me. That was the deal. And you trust him to keep that deal? To not manipulate results, to not use this as leverage for something else? What else would he want? He's getting married. He needs to know if he's about to be a father with his ex-girlfriend. That's all this is. That's all you think this is. But someone made that phone call yesterday. Someone who knew about you and Adrian, about the pregnancy, about timing. Someone is orchestrating this, Isabel. And until we know who and why, you don't go anywhere near Adrian or his chosen clinic. I can't just hide here forever. You can until we have real answers from a source we can trust. I've already arranged for Dr. Chen to do a prenatal paternity test. It's safe, it's reliable, and the results go directly to a lab I control. We'll have them in 3 days. 3 days of living in limbo? 3 days of you looking at me and wondering if I betrayed you. I don't wonder that. I know you. Know that if something happened with Adrian, it wasn't betrayal. It was confusion and pain and maybe too much wine. What I wonder is why someone wants us to doubt each other. Why they're trying to blow up what we're building here. It was such a Luca response, looking for the conspiracy, the enemy, the external threat. But maybe he was right. Maybe someone was pulling strings, creating chaos for reasons she couldn't see. I'm tired, she said, pressing her forehead against the door. I'm so tired of all of this. Then let me in. Let me help carry some of it. She wanted to open the door and fall into his arms and let him make promises about protection and certainty. But she'd learned that Luca's protection came with a price, and right now she couldn't afford to pay it. Tomorrow, she said. We'll talk tomorrow. Tonight, I need to be alone. She heard him sigh, heard the resignation in it. Tomorrow then. But Isabel, whatever the test shows, whatever truth comes out, we deal with it. Together. That's not negotiable. His footsteps retreated down the hall. She waited until they faded completely before unlocking the door, stepping out onto the balcony. The gardens below were bathed in late afternoon sun, beautiful and serene and completely at odds with the chaos in her chest. Her phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on without thinking. A text from an unknown number. Clinic address, 1247, Medical Plaza, Suite 304. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. Come alone. Adrian. Setting up his test. But Luca had already arranged one with Dr. Chen, 2 tests, 2 opportunities for answers, 2 chances to confirm or destroy everything. She should tell Luca about the text, should let him know Adrian was pushing forward with his own test. But something stopped her. Maybe stubbornness. Maybe the need to control at least one piece of this situation. Or maybe just fear that if she gave Luca too much information, too much control, she'd lose what little autonomy she had left. Another text, this one from Luca. Dr. Chen can see you tomorrow at 2 p.m. I'll go with you. So they'd both do tests. Adrian's at 9, Luca's at 2. Belt and suspenders, like Adrian had said. And in 3 days, or 48 hours, depending on which test moved faster, she'd know. Would know if the child growing inside her was the son of the man she'd divorced, or the man she'd married. Would know if the fragile piece she and Luca had built was real, or just another beautiful lie. That night, Isabel didn't go down for dinner. Mrs. Chen brought a tray that she barely touched. She lay in bed watching the ceiling, one hand on her belly, feeling her son move and wondering what he'd think of all this someday. Would he understand that his mother had been trying to do the right thing? Or would he just see the chaos, the doubt, the terrible uncertainty? Around midnight, she heard it again. Footsteps in the hall. The pause outside her door. But tonight, no knock came. Just Luca standing vigil on the other side, close enough to protect but too far to touch. She pressed her hand against the door, imagined his on the other side, separated by wood and doubt and all the things they couldn't say. "I'm sorry," she whispered, knowing he couldn't hear. "For all of it. For the doubt. For Chicago. For not being certain enough to give you peace." The footsteps eventually moved on. Isabel returned to bed and finally, mercifully, fell into restless sleep filled with dreams of hotel rooms and blood tests and babies whose faces she couldn't quite see. When she woke the next morning, resolution had hardened in her chest. She would do both tests, get both sets of results, and then, whatever the truth was, she would face it, with or without Luca's approval, with or without his protection. Because some things, like knowing the truth about her own child, were too important to leave in anyone else's hands, even his. The morning came too soon and not soon enough. Isabel woke at dawn, her body heavy with exhaustion that sleep hadn't touched. She dressed in the pre-dawn darkness, moving quietly through routines that felt mechanical. By 7 a.m., she was downstairs, forcing down toast she didn't want, while Mrs. Chen watched with concerned eyes. "You're going out early," Mrs. Chen observed, not quite a question. "I have an appointment." "Mr. DeMarco left instructions that Marcus should drive you anywhere you need to go." "I know. He's meeting me at 8:30. What she didn't say was that she'd also called a car service, arranged for pickup at 8:15 before Marcus could intervene. She needed to do this on her own terms, without Luca's security watching, without the weight of his control pressing down on every choice. At 8:10, her phone buzzed, Luca calling. She let it go to voicemail, grabbed her purse, headed for the front entrance. Marcus was already there, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed and an expression that said he'd been expecting this. "Going somewhere without me?" "I have a private appointment. I'll be back before noon." "Boss isn't going to like that." "Boss doesn't have to like everything I do." "Isabel," Marcus straightened, his tone shifting from professional to almost pleading. "Whatever you're planning, think it through. People are watching, people who want to hurt Luca by hurting you. Going out alone, unprotected. I'm taking a car to a medical clinic. I'll be fine." "Which clinic?" She almost told him, almost gave in to the comfort of having backup, protection, someone making sure she stayed safe. But that would mean Luca knowing, controlling, making this about his certainty instead of hers. "I'll text you when I get there. You can send someone to watch the building if it makes you feel better. But I'm going alone." A car pulled up outside, not the Mercedes, but a civilian sedan from the service she'd called. Marcus saw it, and his jaw tightened. This is a mistake. Maybe, but it's my mistake to make. She left before he could argue further, slid into the back seat, and gave the driver the address. As they pulled through the gates, she saw Marcus on his phone, undoubtedly calling Luca, reporting that she'd gone rogue. Let him. She was done asking permission for decisions about her own body, her own child. The medical plaza was a nondescript building in a professional district, the kind of place that housed dentists and dermatologists and clinics that promised discretion. Suite 304 was on the third floor behind a door marked only with a number. Isabel knocked, half expecting Adrian to answer. Instead, a woman in scrubs opened the door, middle-aged, professional, with the kind face of someone who'd seen everything and judged nothing. "Ms. Russo? I'm Karen. Mr. Cole arranged for your appointment. Please, come in." The space inside was clinical but comfortable. An examination room, a small waiting area, everything clean and efficient and designed to put nervous patients at ease. "This is a simple blood draw," Karen explained as she prepped the equipment. "Completely safe for you and the baby. We'll extract fetal DNA from your blood sample and compare it to the sample Mr. Cole already provided. Results typically take 48 hours, though we can rush it for an additional fee." "How much additional?" "For same-day results?" $2,000. Isabel didn't have $2,000. Barely had $200 after months of living on minimum wage. But she needed to know. Needed answers before Dr. Chen's test this afternoon, before 3 more days of limbo destroyed what little peace remained. "I can't afford that." "It's already been covered. Mr. Cole left payment information with instructions to expedite if you requested it. Of course he had. Adrian, solving problems with money the way people like him always did. Then yes, rush it. The blood draw took less than 5 minutes. Karen was efficient, gentle, talking her through the process in a soothing voice that suggested she'd done this particular test before. Women with doubt. Women with uncertainty. Women whose lives hung in the balance of DNA comparisons. You'll receive results via encrypted email by 6 p.m. today, Karen said as she labeled the vials. The message will come from a generic medical address. No identifying information. Mr. Cole will receive the same email simultaneously. Not before me. Simultaneously? That was his instruction. He was very clear that you both needed to see the results at the same time. Small comfort, but comfort nonetheless. Isabel left the clinic feeling hollowed out, walked to the lobby and texted Marcus her location. He replied within seconds. Stay there. Coming to get you. She sat in an uncomfortable chair by the elevator and waited, watching people come and go with their routine medical concerns. A woman with a child who had a scraped knee, an elderly man with a walker. Normal people living normal lives where paternity wasn't uncertain and the father of your child wasn't a crime boss who'd probably already had this building surrounded. Marcus arrived in under 10 minutes, his expression carved from stone. He didn't speak until they were in the Mercedes, pulling back into traffic. You want to tell me what that was about? Medical appointment, like I said. Right, and it required such secrecy because I needed to do something on my own, without input. Without Luca orchestrating every detail. He's trying to protect you. He's trying to control me. There's a difference. Marcus was quiet for several blocks. Then, the test. It was a paternity test, wasn't it? No point in lying. Yes. And the other guy, Adrian, he was there? No, just his DNA sample and mine. Results by 6 tonight. Jesus Christ, Isabel. Do you have any idea what this is going to do to him, to the boss? It's going to give him the truth. Isn't that what everyone wants? Not if the truth destroys him. The words hit harder than they should have. Marcus had worked for Luca for years, had seen him at his worst, and if he thought this could destroy Luca, then maybe he shouldn't have built his hope on something that wasn't certain, Isabel said, though the words felt hollow. They drove the rest of the way in silence. Back through the gates, back to the estate that was beautiful and suffocating in equal measure. Mrs. Chen met her at the door with the news that Luca was in his study, waiting. Of course he was. Isabel found him standing at the window, same position as always, staring out at grounds he controlled like he could bend the whole world to his will through sheer force of determination. He turned when she entered, and the look on his face made her breath catch. Not anger, hurt. You went to his clinic, he said quietly, did his test, without telling me. I told you I needed to handle this my way. Your way. Right, because including me in decisions about my son is too much to ask. I don't know if he's your son. The words came out sharper than intended. That's the whole point, Luca. I don't know, and neither do you. So stop calling him yours when we don't have proof. I have all the proof I need. I was there when he was conceived. I'm here now. I'm the one who wants to be his father. Wanting doesn't change biology, and biology doesn't change love. He moved closer, and she could see the shadows under his eyes. He hadn't slept either. I will love this child regardless of what some test says. You need to know that. Need to believe it. How can you say that? How can you promise to love a child that might be another man's? Because he's yours. And that's enough. The simplicity of it broke something in her chest. All this time, she'd been terrified that the truth would destroy them, destroy any chance at the family she'd started to hope for. But Luca was standing here telling her that DNA didn't matter, that biology was secondary to choice. You say that now, she whispered. But when the results come back? When the results come back, I'll feel exactly the same. Relieved, maybe, if they confirm what I already know. But my commitment to being a father to this child doesn't change based on genetics. Luca, we have an appointment with Dr. Chen at 2. Are you still planning to do that test? Yes. Belt and suspenders, like Adrian said. His expression darkened at Adrian's name. I don't trust him, Don't trust his clinic, his test, his motives. Then we wait for Dr. Chen's results. 3 days. We can wait 3 days. Can we? Because you look like you're barely holding it together, and I'm not far behind you. He wasn't wrong. The strain of the past 48 hours had worn them both down to raw edges and exposed nerves. 3 more days of this might actually break them. The clinic is rushing Adrian's test. Results by 6 tonight. Luca went very still. Tonight. Yes. And if they say... He stopped, seemed unable to finish the question. If they say he's the father, then we deal with that. Figure out custody, co-parenting, whatever needs to happen. If they say you're the father, then Adrian disappears and we move forward. Move forward to what exactly? You staying here out of necessity? Us raising a child while you resent me for the control I have over your life? I don't know, she admitted. I honestly don't know what comes next. I just know we need the truth first. He nodded slowly, accepting what he couldn't change. Then we wait. Together. No more running off to secret appointments. No more handling this alone. Whatever happens at 6 o'clock, we face it together. Okay. I mean it, Isabel. No more secrets. No more secrets, she agreed, though the words felt like a promise she didn't know if she could keep. The appointment with Dr. Chen was mechanical, routine, another blood draw that would add to the collection of samples floating around laboratories waiting to reveal truth. Doctor. Chen was professional, asked no questions about why a second test was necessary, just did her job and promised results within 72 hours. By 4 p.m., they were back at the estate. 2 hours until Adrian's results. 120 minutes of waiting that stretched like years. Luca retreated to his study to handle business, or to avoid sitting in silence with her. Isabel wasn't sure which. She went to her room, tried to read, gave up after reading the same paragraph 6 times without comprehension. At 5:30, her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. 30 minutes. Whatever the results say, I want you to know I'm prepared to step up if needed, or step back if that's what's right. She didn't respond. What was there to say? At 5:45, she went downstairs. Found Luca in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand that he wasn't drinking, just holding like a talisman against whatever came next. 15 minutes, he said without checking his watch. I know. Come here. She crossed to where he sat on the leather sofa, and he pulled her down beside him, not touching beyond proximity, but close enough that she could feel his warmth, smell his cologne, remember all the times this had been simple. I need you to understand something, he said, still not looking at her. Whatever happens in... He checked his watch now. 12 minutes. I meant what I said. About being a father to this child. About wanting to be in your life. Luca, let me finish, please. He set down the untouched whiskey, turned to face her fully. When you left, when you divorced me, I told myself it was for the best, that you deserved better than what I could give you. But having you back here, seeing you every day, feeling our son move under my hand, it's shown me what life could be. And I don't want to lose that. Don't want to lose you. Again. You're assuming the test will say he's yours. I'm saying it doesn't matter, son or not, genetically. He's ours, Isabel. We're the ones who are here, who want this, who are willing to build a life around him. And if Adrian wants that too, then we figure it out. Shared custody, co-parenting, whatever keeps our son's best interests first. But I'm not walking away. And I'm not letting you walk away either, not unless that's what you really want. I don't know what I want, she admitted. I've been in survival mode for so long, I forgot how to want things beyond just making it through another day. Then let me want things for us. Let me build something here, something safe and real, and you can decide if you want to be part of it. No pressure, no demands, just possibility. Her phone buzzed. 6 p.m. They both stared at it like it might explode. Open it, Luca said quietly. Whatever it says, we deal with it. Isabel's hand shook as she unlocked her phone, found the encrypted email from the medical address Karen had mentioned. The subject line was just a case number. Nothing identifying, nothing personal. She clicked it open. The message was clinical, brief, designed to deliver information without emotion. Prenatal paternity test results for case number 4. 782-B. Tested. Alleged father, Adrian Cole. Probability of paternity, 0.00%. Adrian Cole is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. The words blurred as tears spilled over. Relief crashed through her so hard she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the weight of uncertainty lifting like she'd been drowning, and someone had finally pulled her to the surface. "Isabel?" Luca's voice, urgent. "What does it say?" She handed him the phone, unable to speak. She watched his face as he read, watched the progression of emotions, confusion, comprehension, and then something that looked like joy breaking through 9 months of carefully controlled hope. "He's mine," Luca whispered, and his voice cracked on the words. "Our son. He's mine." "Yours," Isabel confirmed, and then she was crying in earnest, great heaving sobs that shook her whole body. Luca pulled her against his chest, his arms coming around her like he could physically hold her together while she fell apart. "It's okay. You're okay. We're okay." "I'm sorry," she gasped between sobs. "I'm so sorry for doubting, for putting us through this, for—" "Stop. You have nothing to apologize for. Someone planted that doubt deliberately, made you question your own memory. That's not on you. But Chicago, nothing happened in Chicago. You know that now. Whatever Adrian thinks he remembers, whatever he told you, it was either a lie or his own confused memory. But the truth is in the science, and the science says our son is ours." Our son. The words had never sounded so perfect. They sat like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, while Isabel cried out 9 months of fear and uncertainty and desperate hope that she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. Luca held her through it all, his hand making slow circles on her back, his voice murmuring reassurances in Italian she didn't need to understand to feel. Eventually, the tears stopped. Isabel pulled back, probably looking like a disaster with red eyes and a blotchy face, but Luca was looking at her like she was beautiful anyway. "I need to call Adrian," she said. "Let him know. He got the same email. He knows. Still, I should say something." Her phone rang before she could decide what that something should be. Adrian calling. She answered on speaker so Luca could hear. "Isabel," Adrian's voice sounded hollow. "I got the results." "I know. I'm sorry you went through this. Sorry I couldn't give you certainty sooner. Don't apologize. I'm the one who should apologize. I was so sure. I convinced myself that night was more than it was. Built up this whole narrative in my head." He paused. "I think I wanted it to be true. Wanted a reason to not get married, to not commit. And when I saw that photo of you pregnant, it felt like fate giving me an out." "That's not... Adrian, that's not fair to your fiancé." "I know, which is why I'm calling it off. The engagement. I'm not ready, and she deserves someone who is. You can't blow up your life over this." "I'm not. I'm finally being honest about what I want. And what I want isn't marriage right now, maybe not ever." He sighed, and it sounded tired. "Take care of yourself, Isabel. And your son. Be happy." The line went dead. Isabel stared at her phone, processing the reality that her doubt had somehow unraveled someone else's life entirely. "That's not your fault either," Luca said, reading her expression. "His choices are his own." "I know, everything got so messy so fast." "Life is messy. We just do our best to navigate it." Her phone buzzed again. Another email, this one from a different address. She almost ignored it, but something made her open it. The sender was anonymous. The message was brief. "You needed to know the truth. Both of you did. Sometimes doubt is the only way to find certainty. Consider this a gift. A friend." "What the hell?" Isabel showed Luca the message. His expression went dark. Someone orchestrated this. The phone call, the doubt, maybe even Adrian's sudden certainty about that night. Someone wanted us questioning the paternity. But why? What would anyone gain from that? Chaos, division. Making us doubt each other makes us weak, and weak opponents are easier to manipulate. You think it's connected to your business? To the Rossi family or whoever you were dealing with? I think it's connected to someone who understands that my greatest vulnerability isn't my empire. It's you. And now, our son. The implications of that settled over Isabel like ice water. Someone out there knew about the baby, knew about her relationship with Luca, knew enough about her past to weaponize Adrian against her. I want increased security, Luca said, already pulling out his phone. On you, on the estate, on anyone who comes within 100 yards of you. If someone's playing games with our family, they're about to learn what happens when they cross me. Luca, you can't just, I can and I will. This isn't negotiable, Isabel. Someone tried to destroy what we're building, tried to make you doubt, make me doubt, tear us apart from the inside. That's an act of war. Or it's someone trying to help. The message said it was a gift, truth through doubt. That's rationalization for manipulation. No one who cared about us would put us through this. She wanted to argue, but he was probably right. The past 48 hours had been torture, and whoever had set it in motion had known exactly what they were doing. So what now? She asked. We fortify the walls, trust no one, live in constant fear? We protect what matters, our son, our family, and yes, we're more careful about who we trust. He pulled her close again, his hand settling on her belly where their son was moving, responding to the stress in her body. But we also move forward, together. No more doubt about whose child this is. No more question about whether we belong in each other's lives. Luca, just because the paternity is confirmed doesn't mean we've solved everything else. You still do things I can't accept, live a life I can't be part of. Then help me change it. You wanted me to be better. Show me how. Give me a reason to choose differently. That's not fair. I can't be responsible for your redemption. I'm not asking you to redeem me. I'm asking you to give me a chance to be the man our son deserves as a father. The man you fell in love with before you knew what I really was. That man might not exist anymore. Or maybe he's been here all along, just buried under necessity and survival. Help me find him again, Isabel, please. The please broke her, again. Luca DeMarco, who commanded empires and terrified enemies, reduced to begging his ex-wife for a chance at being better. I don't know if I can do this, she whispered. Live here, raise our son in your world, watch you make choices I can't support. Then we'll find a middle ground. I'll step back from the parts of the business that bother you most. Delegate. Create distance. It won't be perfect, but we can try. You'd really do that? Walk away from power? For you? For our son? Yes. I'd walk away from all of it if that's what it took. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that people could change, that love could be enough, that their son could grow up with both parents who loved him instead of shuttling between two broken homes. I need time, she said finally, to think, to process everything that's happened, to figure out what I actually want instead of just reacting to crisis after crisis. How much time? I don't know, weeks maybe, until the baby comes. Let me see what kind of father you are before I decide what kind of partner I can be. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Luca seemed to understand that. Okay, you stay here, safe and cared for. I prove myself. And when our son is born, when you see what we can be as a family, you decide. And if I decide I can't do this, can't live with who you are, then I accept that. But I still get to be part of his life. That's the non-negotiable part. I never wanted to keep you from him. Even when I thought running was the right choice, I always knew he deserved to know his father. Even a father like me. Especially a father like you. Complicated and flawed and trying. They sat together as evening deepened into night, not speaking, just existing in the space they'd carved out between certainty and possibility. Outside, security lights came on. Guards changed shifts. The fortress maintained its watch. But inside, something had shifted. The doubt that had hung over them like smoke had cleared, leaving behind hard truths and harder questions about what came next. Around 9, Isabel's stomach growled audibly. Luca laughed. Actually laughed. The sound rusty from disuse, but genuine. When did you last eat? Toast this morning. I couldn't stomach anything else. Mrs. Chen made lasagna. Your favorite. You remember that? I remember everything about you, Isabel. Even the things I wish I could forget. They ate dinner together in the kitchen, Just the two of them, with Mrs. Chen hovering nearby and pretending not to be pleased that they were sitting at the same table again. The lasagna was perfect, the conversation was careful, and for a few hours, it felt almost normal. After dinner, Luca walked her to her room, paused at the door like he had every night, but tonight was different. Tonight the weight between them had changed shape. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for doing the test, for getting the truth, even though it was terrifying, for giving us this certainty. I needed it too, needed to know, and now you do." He hesitated, then leaned in and pressed a kiss to her forehead, gentle, reverent, the kind of kiss that promised nothing and everything simultaneously. "Sleep well. You and our son." After he left, Isabel stood in her room and pressed her hand to where his lips had touched her skin. Something had shifted tonight. The doubt was gone, replaced by a different kind of uncertainty, the kind that came from possibility instead of fear. She changed into pajamas, climbed into bed, and for the first time in months, fell into sleep that felt like rest instead of escape. The days that followed developed a new rhythm. Luca kept his promise about stepping back from the darker parts of his business. He took meetings from home instead of his downtown office, delegated more to Marcus and his other lieutenants, spent evenings with Isabel discussing nursery plans and baby names and all the mundane details that would have bored him a year ago, but now seemed to fascinate him. He was trying, really trying, and Isabel found herself softening in response, found herself laughing at his terrible jokes, letting him feel the baby kick without pulling away, imagining what it might look like if they actually made this work. 5 weeks passed in this strange, suspended animation. Isabel's belly grew, the baby's movements became stronger, and the due date crept closer with both excitement and terror. Then, 3 weeks before she was due, Isabel woke in the middle of the night to wetness and pain. Her water had broken. The next hours were a blur. Luca appearing at her door in seconds like he'd been waiting for this. Marcus driving them to the hospital with the kind of speed that should have been terrifying but felt necessary. Dr. Chen meeting them with her team already assembled. Labor was long and brutal, and nothing like the books had described. Isabel had thought she understood pain, but this was different. Primal and overwhelming and absolutely worth it, when after 16 hours, their son entered the world with a furious cry that announced his arrival to anyone within earshot. Asher DeMarco, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, perfect in every way. Luca held him first, and the look on his face, wonder and terror and love so fierce it was almost frightening, made Isabel's decision for her. This was what family looked like. Imperfect and complicated and absolutely right. When the nurses had cleaned her up, when Asher was swaddled and calm, when it was just the three of them in the quiet hospital room, Isabel reached for Luca's hand. "Stay," she said simply. "I'm not going anywhere." "No, I mean stay, with us. Not just as Asher's father, as whatever we can be to each other, partners, co-parents, maybe more, if we can figure out how." "Isabel, I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm not saying I've forgiven everything or that I won't still struggle with parts of your life, but watching you with him, our son, I see what you could be, what we could be, and I want to try." Luca's eyes filled with tears he didn't bother to hide. "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm tired of running from uncertainty, tired of choosing safety over possibility. So yes, let's try, really try." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promises they'd have to work every day to keep. Asher slept between them, tiny and perfect, and oblivious to the complicated love story that had brought him into existence. That night, in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and new beginnings, Isabel Russo and Luca DeMarco didn't solve all their problems, didn't erase the past or guarantee the future, but they chose each other anyway. Chose the messy, imperfect, terrifying possibility of family over the safety of separate lives. And in the end, that choice was enough. 3 months later, Isabel moved back into the master suite. 6 months after that, Luca officially stepped back from the illegal parts of his empire, restructuring his businesses to focus on legitimate enterprises. A year after Asher's birth, they stood in front of a judge and renewed their vows, not because they needed the legal recognition, but because they wanted to promise again, with full knowledge of what they were choosing. The fortress walls came down gradually, replaced by security that felt protective instead of imprisoning. Isabel started a foundation using Luca's resources to help women escaping dangerous situations. Women like she'd been, running from lives that had become unbearable. Luca funded it without question, without control, letting her build something that was entirely hers. Asher grew healthy and strong, developing his father's intensity and his mother's stubborn independence. He'd grow up knowing the truth about his family, the complexity, the compromises, the love that existed despite and because of the complications. But that was for later. For now, they focused on the small moments. Midnight feedings and first smiles, learning to be parents and partners simultaneously, building something new from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. It wasn't perfect. Some days were hard. Some nights Isabel still woke wondering if she'd made the right choice. Some mornings Luca still looked at his son and marveled that he'd been given this chance at all. But they'd chosen each other. Chosen to stay instead of run, to build instead of destroy, to love despite every reason to walk away. And in a world of certainty and doubt, of truth and lies, of complications that never quite resolved, that choice was the only thing that mattered. The rest, they'd figure out together. One day, one moment, one imperfect choice at a time.